Is it true that you did a thing called Semester at Sea?
I did. I took French in high school, and I took German in college.
Yeah.
Because my grandfather, you might remember, was German, Adolf, right?
It's just a wild thing every time you say that. It is never not shocking.
Well, it's interesting because he was one of 3 boys, and all the others Americanized their names, and he did not.
It would be like someone being like, my uncle, Pol Pot. You're like, really? Or just, my great-grandfather, Genghis. You're like, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just evokes a lot.
Yeah.
Cynthia Nixon has been killing it since she was a teenager. Just for perspective, in a single year, 1984, she was in 2 Mike Nichols plays on Broadway and an Oscar-winning film, Amadeus. By that age, my accomplishments in life amounted to 1, working at Office Max, and 2, virginity. Of course, Cynthia is mostly famous for Sex and the City, for which she won an Emmy that was presented to her by Donald Trump. And I guess that moment radicalized her because after his election in 2016, she ran for governor of New York against Andrew Cuomo, who then won and then resigned in disgrace and now is running again, but for New York City mayor. So I sat down with Cynthia Nixon to talk about politics and her 2 hit HBO shows. And just like that, in the Gilded Age. And of course, there will be a lot of dunking on Andrew Cuomo.
Round 2, fight!
So you grow up and you kind of come of age as a performer in New York City.
Yes.
During a very particular decade, the 70s. And,
Yes.
and over the course of your career, you've had many iconic on-screen villains. But you more recently had an on-screen real-life villain when you ran against Governor Cuomo in
Andrew
2018.
Cuomo, yes.
Who resigned in 2021 in disgrace, and then now I guess is running again in disgrace, is it?
Yes, right.
Or is it just new year, new me, 2025? Like, what's happening there?
What's happening? I think, I think if you did the things that Andrew Cuomo did and you have been forced to resign, you're living in the political wilderness. And so you let a few years pass and you try and get back in the game, which is what I think is happening. And you obviously have a lot of name recognition and you still have a lot of deep-pocketed donors and allies.
What's wild is as of this interview, he's leading in the polls right now.
Well, yes, that doesn't surprise me at all because, until you get quite near to an election, when you ask people, who you're going to vote for, it's really pretty much just a name check question. It's really all about, name recognition. At this point. And I think the thing about Andrew Cuomo is he did have to resign a few years back. And so I think some of what he did has faded from memory. But I think that when you look at these polls, that at first they check him off. And then you remind people what he did. You remind them about the nursing home deaths. You remind them about the corruption, the incredible corruption of his closest aides who were forced to not only resign, but some went to jail.
Right.
And the sexual harassment of 13 women. I mean, those are just the women that were brave enough to come forward, right? And that, this is not a guy who made a couple of mistakes and apologized and has turned over a new leaf.
Yeah.
This is a guy who has, I think at this point, so when he got accused, when these women came forward and reported what he had done, he sued the state of New York, and so New York taxpayers are still paying his legal fees for going after these women and hounding them into the ground. So that we've already paid, I think, more than $25 million, and we're not done yet. And he has the harassment that happened while he was in office was a really terrible thing. And the harassment that he still continues to do to these women to try and make them go away, to the point of, like, he tried to subpoena one woman, her gynecological records. I mean, like, the level of, Lindsay Boylan, who was the very first person to step forward and say what was happening, her own legal bills at this point are $1.5 million. So this is not a guy who has changed at all and has in no way acknowledged what he's done. And this is a guy who has not really been prosecuted because he resigned before he could. But, he was hauled into Washington, I think, last month. So if part of the problem we have with Eric Adams is that he's sold us down the river to Trump is in exchange for dropping investigations. Well, apart from everything else, it seems to me we have exactly that with Andrew Cuomo, a guy who is incredibly vulnerable to prosecution and might, if he was elected, might just make whatever deal he could to save his own skin, and New Yorkers be damned.
Yeah, I mean, you have lived in New York longer than me, so I think you understand the pulse of the city and the New York population. I would even say just the surrounding area, perhaps better than me. You said that your political awakening happened after Trump's first win in 2016. And
right. I mean, political awakening to the point of like
running for office.
I can't just have opinions anymore.
Yes.
I have to do something.
And I was wondering, when you look at what's happening both domestically, like here in the state, in the city, and nationally, what's happening with the presidency, some people in the media have called it this Manlash moment. I've seen it. I grew up in Davis, California, Northern California, which is near Sacramento. I see it more as like a Kirkland signature dad moment back. Like it's the Tommy Bahama dads backlash. How do you see it? I'm trying to see it from a perspective of, like these are the kids that I grew up with and these are their parents. And I'm trying to make sense of it that way.
I mean, I do think there is a lot of misogyny that has come rushing in. We certainly saw it with Hillary. We certainly saw it with Kamala. Yeah. But I think if you step just a tiny bit back, it seems to me that the main thing that is happening and the main thing that has been happening for a long time is income inequality, and that's it, right? And I think so many men who have veered right, a lot of it has to do with the fact of their inability to make a living and to provide for their families and to feel like there's some kind of a future for them or feel like there's some kind of a future for their children or their grandchildren. And I think, misogyny and racism and homophobia, these are big currents that run through our world. Yeah. And I don't mean to at all diminish them.
Right.
But I think if you look at what happened, that the Democrats have just not provided a very articulate or compelling alternative to Trump because they are so in the pocket of their donors.
Sure. How did you navigate this whole thing? We're in a very precarious situation where artists are often asked to not participate in politics. There is this sort of, as LeBron was told, to shut up and dribble. Right? Were you ever told to, hey, I don't want to hear your opinion about this. Like, just shut up and act. Did you feel a certain way about that? Were you?
I mean, I'm not sure what to say about it. I feel like, on the one hand, I feel like actors and sports figures and people like that are constantly being asked their opinion about politics.
Sure. Look over my shoulder right here, Muhammad Ali.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yes, certainly there are people in my world who have sometimes said, do you have to be so vocal on this, right? But I feel like, that's 100% who I am, and that's who I've always been, and I'm my parents' child, and I think my parents, neither of whom are still living, but I think my parents would be very disappointed in me if I didn't say what I thought about political goings-on because somebody might not give me an endorsement or something.
Well, what's interesting is I think people also don't add, we're a reflection of the times. artists, musicians, poets, films, these are a reflection of what
Yeah.
is happening in
Yeah.
the current cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And to pretend that we don't have thoughts or opinions on it outside of what you see on a call sheet or a script, I think is a little
It's
silly.
very interesting. I was just talking to this woman, French actress named Judith Godrèche, who
Yeah.
is sort of the person who has like broken open Me Too in France. She has a film called Moi aussi, and I won't talk about her for a long time, but it was so interesting. I interviewed her, and she and I had some private conversations too, and she said that we don't understand what it's like just in France, for example. It's that people do not speak about politics. She said every once in a while,
interesting.
the most famous person
Yeah.
in France will like say something about
Macron or
we need to
something.
or we need to protect the earth. Recycle.
okay. Yeah.
But that's kind of,
Oh, got it. So it's like a vague.
it's sort of a
Okay.
base. It's so softball and
Sure.
So I was sort of stunned by that, and I said, but I feel like your revolution is so much more immediate to you guys than our revolution. I feel like, and she said, yes, but the point is, before either of our revolutions, we were an aristocracy, and we still have that, and there is still like, don't say anything bad about the king,
Oh, interesting.
kind of thing, and we have a lot of troubles. At least we don't have that yet.
Yeah. I mean,
We'll see.
yet. And maybe we kind of do. Help me unpack this. I was thinking about this and I was like, oh, I got to ask Cynthia this. So you obviously ran for governor in 2018. And so you got to see a little bit of how that political machine works, fundraising, campaigning, all of that. But there's also this super interesting conversation around celebrities running for president. And it's a very polarizing question.
Right.
So some people are like, The Rock should run for president. It's like, no, George Clooney should run for president. Oprah for president. And some people are
I
either
don't really
with
want to
it or
see
they're-
any of those people as president, but I tell you, I would,
Yeah.
give one of my toes right now if one of those people were president versus the president we had.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Look, I'm not a person who wants to see more actors or sports figures in office. Like, I don't particularly think that's an especially good thing.
Yeah, and I'll qualify, right? Reagan, obviously.
Well, but right, but I also want to say it's not an especially bad thing. It's like I obviously was not a fan of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
But the things that I didn't like about Reagan's presidency had nothing to do with him being an actor, right?
Right. Sure.
And, and I played Nancy Reagan in a TV movie a few years ago. And I read a lot of stuff about the Reagans, but also by the Reagans.
Oh, interesting.
And there was one quote from Ronald Reagan who said, people ask me what kind of a training is that for being a governor or being an actor. And he said, I don't understand how anybody who wasn't an actor first could even do this job. By which I think he meant more campaigning than right.
Got it.
But it was like, well, first of all, people know who you are, right?
Yeah.
People already presumably like you. They're disposed toward you.
Yeah.
You're used to interacting with the public.
Totally.
You're used to being in front of people and interacting with strangers, and you're used to somebody handing you a piece of paper
And reading
with no notice at all,
Yeah.
and going out there and making it sound like these are your extemporaneous thoughts.
Yeah. How good is your cold read? But it looks impromptu. And,
Right.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think if in terms of like why I ran for governor,
Yeah.
I ran for governor because I didn't want Andrew Cuomo to be our governor. And I also didn't want Andrew Cuomo to get away with the stuff that he was getting away with.
Mm-hmm.
And because he is so famously vindictive, no one in New York with any political standing would run against him, because as soon as you do that against Andrew Cuomo, if you're in politics, your career is over before you as soon as basically you open your mouth.
I was thinking that.
And so also I'll just say that
Sure.
that they had been trying to get me to run against him for quite a while, for a number of election cycles before I actually did. And then 4 years before I ran, Zephyr Teachout, who is a law professor from Fordham, a brilliant, articulate woman who nobody would take her candidacy seriously because nobody had ever heard of her. They wouldn't even put her on television.
Yeah.
And yet she got a third of the vote.
Oh, interesting.
And I thought, wow, Zephyr, they were trying to get me to run. I didn't. Zephyr did. And Zephyr is so brave. And if Zephyr can do that, and they won't even put her on television, I can do that or better because they're going to put me on television.
Oh, that's really fascinating. Yeah.
That I had two advantages. I'm not in politics, so he can't end my career.
Right.
And people are interested in me because they've heard of me and they are disposed to like me.
But what I thought was really interesting is you ran as a very progressive, almost like Bernie AOC style progressive.
Yes, definitely.
And then you went back to Hollywood. Was that scary?
Well, so I ran.
Yeah.
And it took maybe 9 months out of my life, right? And then I think the primary that I lost was in September.
Yeah.
And then I think I was Christmas shopping. I think I was at Banana Republic, I want to say.
All right.
Christmas shopping, so it must have been November, December, whatever. And I got a call from Ryan Murphy, who I didn't know at all. Talking up this project that his next project that he wanted me to be a part of. And it was like Sarah Paulson and Sharon Stone and Judy Davis and Sophie Okonedo and so many amazing people in it. And the part seemed juicy. It was Sarah Paulson's love interest.
Yeah, all of it seemed juicy, yeah.
And it was like a prequel to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah,
It was like so many fascinating. It was a period piece. It was a queer period piece.
I wish I got a call like that.
I know.
I was at the Old Navy outlet.
I'm at Banana Republic. I was like,
And I was just Christmas shopping for socks. There I was.
Right. And so, it was I try not to work outside of New York City, and this shot in California. And it's one of the few things I've done that was in California because I try to stay at home because I got kids and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a job that I probably would have taken even if I hadn't just not worked in a year or whatever.
Right.
Apart from it being an amazing experience, it was just such a lifeline that Ryan Murphy threw to me.
Yeah.
Because it was like, what's going to happen next? And it was interesting, too, because he had me playing a woman who was the power, I wouldn't say the power behind the throne, but she was the press agent of the governor of California who was corrupt. And it was so it was a person in politics, which is, I think, probably why he thought of me for it, or one of the reasons he thought of me for it.
Well, so, I got to give you your flowers because you've gone really hard in the paint. You tweeted in 2018, ICE is a terrorist organization.
Yes,
just
ICE should be abolished,
Yeah. And did you ever feel fear of, hey, how will this resonate with my other colleagues in showbiz? Will this be alienating? Will I work again? And especially after diving into being a front-facing politician who's trying to run for office. Did you ever feel that way? Or were you like, no, this is what I believe and this is what it is?
Yeah, I love the Taylor Swift documentary, Miss Americana.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's so,
So the scene, paint the scene. The scene, she's in a green room with
she's right,
with the team,
and she really wants to speak out about the presidential and who she's supporting, and her people are very don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, and the memory and the example of the Dixie Chicks is so
Isn't
enormous.
That wild? Isn't that such a wild thing to think about when people are like, do you remember the Dixie Chicks? They lost everything. And
it's true.
They were just...
It's true. But...
The hot take
but
was
I want to say,
they were against the Iraq War.
First of all, I have, Sex and the City and Now and Just Like That. These are very broadly appealing shows. But it's not Taylor Swift,
Sure.
right? And also,
Don't hold yourself short, Cynthia.
but I mean, also Taylor,
you're an iconic
started out as a country performer,
Right.
So there's, it's a lot more of red America as opposed to blue America or purple America or whatever.
Yeah.
But in terms of like my colleagues, no.
Okay.
I mean, everybody always knew who I was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I think people were a lot more afraid of when I fell in love with my wife, coming out as being with a woman as opposed to like, abolish ICE.
Right. No, but
I don't feel like there are a lot of people that I interact with in show business who feel like ICE is like really dear to their
they're
hearts.
down with ICE. Got it. Okay, understood. I want to jump to the Gilded Age. Okay.
All we both want is your happiness. You may disagree with us, but that is all we want.
Here's a really interesting connection point. Your governor's campaign obviously focused on inequality and economic inequality.
Yeah.
The Gilded Age absolutely focuses
Yeah.
on economic inequality. Do you think that show is a commentary on the current Gilded Age that we're living through right now?
I mean, look, I think the Gilded Age in the 1880s was a fascinating period in so many ways.
Yeah.
So much social upheaval, so much innovation, so much wealth disparity, so much immigration was such a thing, women's rights, civil rights, like there's so much going on.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that makes it so compelling is how much it is just like our moment now.
Do you want to hear a 2025
Statistic?
factoid?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. To the folks that are watching and listening, this is a fun factoid. Check this out. And it's actually, it's not check this. This is not cool. Check this out, guys. The wealth of the richest 5 Americans in the United States of America right now is about $1 trillion. Half of Americans have less than $500 in their bank account.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk about wild economic inequality and disparity. And I think I wanted to ask you, as someone who obviously researched it and you're great on the show, how do the ultra rich, the oligarchs of today compare to the Gilded Age robber barons of the 1880s?
Let's be really clear that the Gilded Age robber barons were not nice people.
Okay.
Right? These
All
are bad guys.
Yeah, we have this on the record. Pieces
These are
of shit,
like-
not good people.
These are like,
Say it.
they want to break your strike and they are happy to beat you up and shoot you and like starve your children.
Don't say that about Jeff Bezos. Don't say that. Yeah,
These
we're
are
trying to get him on
not
the show.
nice people,
Got it.
right? These
Yeah.
are people who are really looking to maximize their profits and without any regard for the well-being of their workers.
Yeah.
But I will say one thing is that they built a lot of stuff
Yeah.
for the public good. Now, maybe they just did it because they were, looking so bad. Like
Right.
the Nobel Peace Prize is, founded by a guy who sold munitions and he felt bad about it, so he wanted to be known for peace. And
Yeah.
the Pulitzer Prize, like the king of yellow journalism, right? So
Right.
then his name would have a grandeur to it.
Yes.
But if you think about, Carnegie Hall and, the
Sure.
museums
The
and
Vanderbilt's built Grand Central Station.
exact,
Yeah.
like there are so many museums and libraries and beautiful, things for the public to enjoy that had their, but Trump doesn't even build that. He just builds condos that he can get rich off of,
New
right?
York Public Library down here, at the Astors and the Carnegies helped build
Exactly.
And-
And so I will say that I have a friend who for many years ran ACT in San Francisco, right, which is the American Conservatory Theater, like a great, innovative theater of wonderful quality and longstanding, right? And she just talked about kind of the transformation of San Francisco with the tech boom, because the tech boom is like the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is what caused the robber barons. And the tech boom is a lot of what our current
Yeah.
billionaires and multimillionaires are coming from, right?
Yeah.
And that she said, the old money in the city because she ran it for like 25 years or something. And she used to go around to rich people and say, please donate to the theater, please endow, please include us in your will, or please give us $50,000 a year or whatever it would be. And she says, with these guys, like, forget it. They have no, they're in these palatial offices with ping pong tables and snacks and and they take like buses to work that are just for the employees of those big corporations, which I won't bother to name. And they're barely existing on the streets of San Francisco. Like, their lunch is brought, they don't go to a restaurant. They don't, there is no sense of being and
part of society.
And that you're an incredibly wealthy pillar of society. You employ all these people, you're in this community. It's like, no, I'm in the Google offices or whatever. And there's no sense of, let's endow the symphony. Let's, create a wonderful thing for citizens, your workers, and other people who just live near your business to enjoy.
And let me just say this about Gilded Age people throughout history. It was all built during horrible circumstances. The Taj Mahal, the pyramids, like
totally.
But at least they made great Instagram photos. Okay, like a lot of people were hurt and perhaps died making this, but man, oh man, do these look good in grid.
And let's also be clear. Like, I mean, so part of the thing of the Gilded Age, our TV show, right, is that there are people like me and Christine Baranski who are old money, who don't live ostentatiously. I mean, look, our house is really nice. Don't get me wrong. And then there are these people, the Russells, that come in with money to burn. And so, I mean, I think that that's part of the old rich people. It was part of their class that they did not live in these palatial, gorgeous places, that they were kind of buttoned down. So it was sort of their way of getting in.
In the season 2 arc, for the folks who haven't seen it, there's this whole arc about the Metropolitan Opera, how it's being built and all that stuff.
Right.
Now, I don't have the answer here. Am I being too generous? Because here we are in New York City, and the Sackler family famously also put their name on arts buildings, and they did try to kind of Gilded Age it up a little bit while they were doing fucked up shit. And so I don't have an answer to that. I was like, have they always been messed up? Like, or were they different? It's hard. There's not a clear-cut answer that I have. I will say to the oligarchs you're talking about, the Doomsday Bunker in Hawaii folks, they really don't want to see themselves as a part of society.
No.
Like, you're right.
I think we've lost, particularly among wealthy people, we've lost so much a sense of the common good. It's like the idea that, like, I mean, I feel like Trump and his friends are just really trying to privatize everything and, destroy the Department of Education. And there is this sense of, like, why should we, even repair the roads? We're just coptering in and out. We don't care about the roads. We don't care about clean water. There's always bottled water. It's like, the bottled water is coming from somewhere.
Well, and also there is this thing where I feel this, which is, what is the social contract? And the social contract to me is clean air, clean water. I want to be able to go to the drinking fountain.
And hopefully more than that, hopefully, healthcare.
Yes.
Hopefully a place to live. But I think, I have to say, one's sense of history often starts with one's own life, right? But to me, the great dividing line was Reagan. And he was just the person who said the opposite of Kennedy's, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I feel like Reagan just turned that on its head. It's like, why are your taxes so high? Don't you want to keep the money and spend it on what you want rather than, the common good?
I think he flipped it to, don't ask me any questions. Like, that's not your business.
Government is not the solution. Government is the problem.
Philosophical question.
Yes.
Cynthia, why do we love period pieces so much as a society? Why is historical trauma so titillating to us? There is something about old-timey pain and suffering that we're totally fine with, but we cannot process modern pain and suffering? Like, why do we like that?
Well, I mean, I think the thing about pain and suffering that is happening right now
Yeah.
is particularly painful and scary. First of all, because we're in it and we're feeling it right now.
Yeah.
But also, we don't know what the outcome is. We don't know if we're going to survive or in what shape we're going to survive or what things are going to disappear, what things are going to fall by the wayside, what kind of global warming, what's going to happen with that? Doesn't look so good. You know, the state of our democracy, what's going to happen with that? Doesn't look so good. Whereas even when you see, like we just watched Napoleon the other night. Do you know what I mean? Like horrible things happened and enormous suffering
Unequivocally
happened.
horrible things. Yeah, totally. But like vintage pain.
But the world didn't end.
My theory is that when pain and suffering happens in the past, we are not complicit in the present.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about...
Like HBO's not going to greenlight a show about Sudan now.
Yeah.
It's too much. I think the viewer would be like, am I a part of this? What role does the US government play? Wait, I didn't vote. Wait, should I have? There's this like present moment that we have to reconcile with ourselves, our place in time and history.
Yeah, but also it's like I
I
just watched Invictus, right?
Yeah.
Which is about the South African soccer team and after Nelson Mandela is elected and sort of the uneasiness that white people feel and like what's going to happen to us now.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing about usually the movies that are about like a very difficult, painful time, we usually focus on the heroes, right?
Yeah.
And we can sort of squint and say, I would have been one of those, right? Whereas when you focus on something that's happening right now, it's like, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything about it. And I mean,
where am I in the story? Am I the hero?
And where am I?
Yeah.
Or am I the person who stands by and is just not doing anything?
Too real. I want to pivot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
To the new season of And Just Like That.
Yes, yes, yes.
Full disclosure, Cynthia, I have only seen a couple of episodes of Sex and the City.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like when it's a rerun
Just
on TNT.
very random ones.
Yeah, if I'm, not to brag, if I'm at a hotel in St. Louis and it's on TNT and I'm getting ready for bed.
Is that's bragging?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, if I'm at a Hampton Inn and I turn on that television set and
right.
I'll catch Act 2.
Okay.
I won't see the full episode, but I'm like,
okay,
good for them.
okay, I got it.
Now, whenever I sit down with a famous politician or celebrity, I will always ask my friends, hey, I'm about to sit down with the former president, or I'm about to sit down with Cynthia Nixon. What should I ask them?
Right.
Okay. Now, I'd like to play a brand new game on Hasan Minhaj Doesn't Know called What Should I Ask Them?
What should I ask? What should I ask them? What should I ask them?
Okay.
These are text messages from my friends when I ask them what I should ask you on the show.
All right.
Because you usually, I ask you questions, but you don't get the real spicy ones.
Okay.
Unless
all right.
it's from iMessage and your friends are like, you got to ask them this.
Okay.
So let's do it. Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Let's take a look. All right, this is from my buddy Adam. This was this morning at 9:41 a.m. I go, what should I ask Cynthia Nixon? Adam goes, how did you manage filming The Gilded Age and Just Like That at the same time? And how did you approach switching between characters that are so different from one another?
When I was like 17, 18, I was in these 2 Broadway shows at the same time.
Yeah.
And they were, again, very different characters. One of them was kind of a waif from the Midwest who's like living on the streets and ends up as a hooker and like a very downtrodden, sweet, but doomed person.
Right.
And the other was a young British woman of privilege and great smarts who was like the daughter of a wildly successful playwright and was sort of like sexually precocious. And Christine Baranski played my mother and Jeremy Irons played my dad. And I was like the apple of their eye. It was like, the world was my oyster.
Yeah.
So very different parts, even
Yeah.
different, nationalities.
Did the accent ever bleed through?
No.
Okay.
And so those were 2 different roles that I had done in 2 plays that I had had full rehearsal periods and I had done them each separately and then I put them together, And I thought, well, I did that. How hard could this be? Obviously, I've played Miranda for a very, very long time. And I've played Ada in the Gilded Age for, a few years, since before the pandemic. So there we go. And, but I found it really hard. And it didn't have to do with the period or the characters being different. Actually, that kind of differentiation is helpful. So you don't get confused, right?
Yeah.
They're not overlapping.
Yeah.
But the thing that was really hard, I discovered, was when I did my stage performances, they were all already created. And then I just had to, redo them.
Right.
Whereas this, it's like we get a new script. I have to learn my lines.
Right.
I have to find this thing. Oh, but now I'm doing this. Because so much of an actor is about being immersed in the world. And it's like when I do a play, I've done a number of plays where I never leave the stage, and that's so much easier than coming back on and off. It's like you got to get it up every time.
Oh, interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like
never leaving the stage, meaning you are doing that play and you're not
doing
working
that
on
play,
anything else.
And and like you don't enter and exit.
So you're on.
So you're on, like,
Got it.
The curtain goes up and you never leave until you're like bowing.
Got it. You're literally dropped into the scene.
You're dropped into the scene and there's no
entire
like,
time.
I think I'm going to go call my whatever in the 10 minutes that I have.
Yeah.
Where was I again?
Yeah.
So I think it was really hard to not be immersed and to have a kind of a whiplash as I was trying to learn lines and like build road, build track, of like what's happening to my character now. I don't know. I'm trying to imagine it. Oh, now I got to try and imagine. Oh, now I got to. It was very hard.
Oh, got it.
It was very hard.
I go, what should I ask Cynthia Nixon? She goes, what prompted the change in Miranda's sexuality? I go, I can't ask that. And she goes, come on, please. There's a lot of ease.
Sure. So, when we were talking about doing And Just Like That.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was really concerned, because the show, 90% of the show, the old show, ages really well, and 10% of it is really painful.
Okay.
Whether you're talking about some gay stuff in it, certainly some racial attitudes, but also it's like an unbelievably white show, which was difficult at the time, and now it just is like, oh.
It was his own Gilded Age.
What's that?
It was like
exactly.
Yeah.
And so we would all have separately and together conversations with Michael Patrick King, who's like our creator and stuff. And one of the things we were doing is we were like, we have to bring in people who are not the original women and who are not white and are our peers, right? And we wanted to sort of make it diverse in every possible way, including gender identity, right? And so there were a number of things we did with that, and we had some gay characters from before, and we had someone's kid who turns out to be non-binary, and things like that. But also, Michael Patrick King, we had like a 2-minute conversation. He said, "What do you think? Should we make Miranda queer?" And I was like, "Why not?" Right?
Oh, interesting.
If we're queering up, if we're trying to make it diverse in all these ways, including adding, queer and non-binary people and trans people, you have a homegrown queer, why not put that in? So, and also, honestly, all of our writers, particularly Michael Patrick, they always just steal as much stuff from our own lives as they
they're
can.
down with that. They're just like, let's take from
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So
This is from my wife's friend Priyanka. She goes, how could you do that to Steve? He was so good to you. I don't even know what this means.
that's all right. That's
Priyanka
okay.
just made me.
That's okay. That's fine.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. Sometimes when people
Steve was your old husband.
Steve was my old husband.
Got it.
Sometimes when
I remember him.
Yeah. So when people love a couple, and I mean either a fictional couple or a real couple,
right,
and you find out that people are getting divorced or separated, whatever, sometimes people get very upset,
Yeah, it's very much like a changing of the mascot situation.
And people do, and including sometimes sometimes there's one person who wants to leave and the other person who's being left, and that other person can be very upset.
Oh, right.
But I have to say, in my experience with my friends and in real life, the person who who thinks they don't want to break up, you check in with that person in a year and they're like, oh, we should have done this
That's
so much
true.
earlier.
That's true.
And so
This has happened with a lot of my friends.
You know, you
yes.
can complain that, so you don't know, you haven't seen the show, but you can complain that Miranda didn't come to Steve and say, I don't love you anymore. That instead she had a drinking problem and fooled around with somebody else that she fell in love with. And do you know what I mean? And that broke up the marriage. But like,
Oh, did that break up the marriage?
that broke up the marriage.
That's fucked up.
Well, but you know, people, break up
messy,
marriages
yeah.
that they're
That's
trying
true.
to get out of in all kinds of ways.
That's
And
true.
like, and I think I won't even. I was going to say it's
I'm dropping in now, and you're just giving me the
right.
cliff notes.
And I gotta say, maybe it's more of a male thing, but I'm not sure that this is true. But I do know a number of men who feel like we're married, we have kids, we cannot ever get divorced, and so sometimes they don't check in with their own unhappiness. Do you know what? And it's like, and it makes them good guys in the eyes of the world and in their own eyes. But actually,
right.
you know, and
they see it as like a cell phone contract of like, I'm with T-Mobile. And
I'm with T-Mobile.
And I'm not.
Verizon, get back.
Yeah.
Get thee behind me, Verizon.
I'm
Right?
not thinking about anything else or how I feel about
Right.
T-Mobile.
And
how T-Mobile
so,
makes me feel. Right. I got you.
So.
Okay, next one. This is from Ashley. EIGH. Make this make sense. While Miranda is sharing a tiny apartment with her professor, Carrie just hands her amazing apartment over to her neighbor. What the fuck? Does Carrie hate Miranda?
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, would someone do that?
Well, first of all, I have to say, okay, so I could answer this on a number of levels.
Please, let's do it.
One is Miranda was having a really great time living with her friend who was her law professor, Naya.
Yeah.
They were having a great time. They were like both coming out of their marriages and they were being like soon to be divorced women together and buddies and like out on the town. Like they were having a good time. It wasn't such a tiny apartment. And the other thing is, Carrie, that for her was her single girl apartment. And she wanted to give it to a single girl. Miranda's not really a single girl. She's like a divorced mom. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She felt like she wanted to honor the spirit of who she was and give it to someone that reminded her of herself, but also just on a very practical level, if Miranda moved into Carrie's old apartment, the viewers' heads would go spinning. It's such a... You don't watch the show, so you don't know. It's like as much of that show as like the bar on Cheers or the office on The Office. It would be as as if somehow.
So you mean like it would be a crossing of.
It would be crazy. And it would also be like Carrie had like a love affair with that apartment. It was like, just because I left my husband, it doesn't mean you get to marry him now.
Yeah, this makes things complicated.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm coming at this from a straight dude's perspective who hasn't seen the show. Would it be the equivalent of basically if the DC universe crossed with the Marvel universe, or is this the wrong analogy?
It would be as if like all of a sudden Aquaman was like flying around in Wonder Woman's plane. Like, what?
Yeah, that's not possible.
It would be very jarring.
Sure.
Superman all of a sudden had a sidekick and it was Robin. Be like, what?
Yeah, now I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Kayla, who is a droid user. If Miranda from Sex and
How can you tell?
Well,
because
the
of
green
the color.
bubble.
I see.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gilded Age, class warfare.
Got it,
iPhones
yeah.
versus droids.
Right.
If Miranda from Sex and the City met the older Miranda from And Just Like That, what would she say to her and vice versa?
I feel like older Miranda would have a lot more to say to younger Miranda than younger Miranda would have to say to older Miranda, right?
Sure. I mean, older Miranda clearly would have more wisdom.
Right.
But would older Miranda tell younger Miranda?
I think that one of the main things that older Miranda would say to younger Miranda is, don't stay in corporate law so long. Get out.
That's something...
Get out.
That response, I need to tell my sister. Jeez. She's in corporate law for a long time.
Oh!
That was it.
That was it.
All right. Cynthia, thank you so much.
Thank
for doing
you.
This was rad.
Thank you. It was rad.
Cynthia Nixon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. That was so fun.